Hello everyone, and welcome to another interesting game from round 11 of the 2018 Candidates Tournament. Here we have Levon Aronian with the white pieces against Sergei Karjakin. And it's very interesting. How do you approach this tournament? It's already round 11. You're Levon Aronian, you only have 3.5 points out of 10 games that were just played. How do you proceed? Do you still try and win games? Do you just want to maybe draw the rest of the games and stop the bleeding? What's the idea here? So it's very interesting because it's different in the candidates tournament. In candidates, it doesn't really matter if you win second, third, fourth, fifth place. Only the first place matters. And after Aronian lost that game to Kramnik in round 3, it seems all of the games simply went downhill from him for him. But okay, let's see the game, and also we do have some nice photos. And as a suggestion from a subscriber, I decided to show for this one occasion the photos in full screen. So we do have Sergei Karjakin here, a nice close-up. Here we have Levon Aronian deep in thought, and here we have also a photo of Sergei pondering over the position. And notice that Aronian now does have a coffee saucer under his mug, which could mean that he decided to take up sugar after his game with Wesley So. So let's see the game. We have c4 by Levon, knight to f6, we have knight to f3 and e6. So the English opening. g3, we have d5 and now bishop to g2, the Catalan variation of the English. D captures on c4, queen to a4 check, c5, c6 and queen captures on c4, immediately grabbing the pawn. b5 by Sergei, and here in this position, in most cases, whenever I saw this, I saw queen to c2, but here Levon plays queen to b3, and no doubt this is again yet another home preparation by Levon. Bishop to b7, we have castles, now bishop to e7 and d4. Sergei castles, rook to d1 and knight b to d7 and knight to e5. With the idea that this knight is an excellent piece on e5, and if Sergei captures it, then d captures on e5 will create a nice open file for the rook. But Sergei does it. We have knight captures, d captures on e5, and now knight to d7. And here f4 does seem like the way to go here, but Aronian plays bishop to f4, and now this does seem like an empowered pawn yet again, but it's definitely something he prepared at home. Queen to c7, now targeting this pawn, and knight to d2, preparing knight to f3 or maybe knight to e4, depending on what black plays. We have rook f to d8, and rook f to d8 was an interesting decision. Sergei could have gone for g5, but you can see with this weird positioning of the queen on b3, the bishop on f4, why would you allow g5? Bishop to e3, you could simply capture this pawn here, but after rook a to c1, this was probably what Levon had in mind. Black did win a pawn here, but he's not better. White's almost done with his complete development. He can always go knight e4, attack that pawn on g5. He can break open with h4. With the knight on e4, he's controlling c5, so black can never push c5. This bishop on b7 will remain a silly piece. So not really something black should go for. But okay, rook f to d8 by Karjakin, rook to c1, and now a6. Queen to e3, and again queen to e3, probably a home preparation idea, as this knight to e4 move does seem like the way to go, with the idea that the knight can come to d6, the knight is preventing the pawn to be pushed to c5, also knight to f6 is an idea, and here if black immediately wants to go for c5, then white does have this knight to f6 move. Bishop captures, now pawn captures, opening up a discovered attack to the queen. E5 now blocking, bishop captures on b7, queen captures, and after bishop to e3, knight captures on f6. You don't really gain anything by pushing c4. White can simply capture that as the pawn is pinned, the queen on b7 is undefended. So knight captures, rook captures on c5, and it's a good position for both white and black. Surely Aronian saw this and decided not to go for it. So instead, queen to e3 first. Now c5 immediately, opening up that light square bishop on b7. Bishop captures, queen captures, and now knight to e4. And from here, this knight will have a very nice outpost on d6. We have c4, h4 now, h6, rook to d4, preparing to double up, knight to f8, offering to exchange rooks, b3, rook captures, queen captures, and rook to d8. Knight to d6 finally, bishop captures, pawn captures, and now f6, creating space so the king can also help out with the defense here, and also preparing e5. Bishop to e3, not allowing e5 by winning a piece. We have queen to b2 and now queen to c6. Pawn captures, and now queen to b4, protecting his pawn here and also attacking the c4 pawn. Rook to c8, guarding the c pawn. F3 now, h5, king to f2, and now king to f7. The king is now coming into the game. Rook to d1, knight to d7, queen to b1, with the idea of jumping all the way to h7, so g6, preventing this, and now g4. Rook to h8, not allowing this breakthrough on the king side. G5, simply closing the position with f5. Queen to c2, and now rook back to c8. Queen to c3. King comes all the way to e6, king to g2, and now queen to a4, attacking the a2 pawn. Queen to d2, defending it, queen back to b5, and now a4. a4, an interesting move. Of course, you can't capture the pawn. If you capture it, then queen to d5 will be checkmated. The pawns are covering all the dark squares here, so this would be very, very interesting. But queen to c6, of course, queen to c2, and now rook to b8. Bishop to b2, rook to b3, blocking the queen's defense of the a4 pawn. And here, for some reason, Aronian decided to defend his d6 pawn, and he played bishop to c3. And he allowed Karjakin to capture this a4 pawn, which basically starts a negative flow of the game for Aronian. After rook to b3, simply a5, and after black captures this pawn, you can go rook to c1, and okay, you lost the d6 pawn, but you're going to win the c4 pawn. There's really no way for black to defend it. There's no knight to b6 move now. The bishop is covering all of the squares here. The rook can't help out with the defense of the c4 pawn, so this would have been excellent, and I mean, you're still holding this game. But he played bishop to c3, and now queen captures on a4. So he lost a pawn, and now Karjakin has two passed pawns here. Rook to a1, queen back to c6, and now rook to a5. Okay, he does get some activity for the rook, but here comes rook to b5. You don't want to exchange rooks, allowing these pawns to get connected. Queen to a4, kind of pinning the rook, but knight to b6, immediately kicking the queen back. Queen to a1, and now rook captures. We have queen captures, and now queen to b5. Offering a trade of queens, and you don't really have a good move here. Again, you don't want to trade queens, as black will get two connected passed pawns. If you move the queen, doesn't matter where, then black will simply improve the position and keep pushing his advantage. So here Aronian tried d7. He sacrificed another pawn to gain some counterplay. Sergey grabbed it, king captures on d7, and now queen to a3, with ideas of infiltrating the position with the queen. But Sergey calculates everything extremely precisely, and he plays knight to d5. So he gives up the e5 pawn, but with extreme precision. Bishop captures on e5. Now queen to c6. We have queen to f8, and now queen to e6. And now you'll see how everything falls into place. Queen to b8. We have c3 now, pushing his passed pawn. Queen to b7 check, king to e8, queen to b8 check, king to f7, queen to b7 check, and now this knight that started this whole variation comes finally to e7, and now the king is completely protected. Bishop captures on c3, you do have to play something, and now queen captures on e2 with check. King to h3, and now queen to b5, yet again offering a trade of queens. Queen to c7, but now queen to c6, and this was, I'm sure Sergey found all of this when he played knight to d5. Now he's again offering a trade of queens. He's offering to grab the bishop on c3, to grab the pawn on f3, and you can't defend everything. And this is one horrible aspect of the game when you're playing a game for like 6 hours. And you have an excellent game. I mean, before Aronian decided to basically blundered at a pawn, the position was equal. And then you give up the pawn, and then you realize that you no longer have the option of trading queens, because the endgame without the queens is winning for Karjakin. So that's one terrible thing that can happen to anyone. It happened to me a lot of times, and you know, that's there are so few moves you can actually play, because all of the trades actually favor the guy with the extra pawn. But okay, queen to e5, defending the bishop, queen captures on f3 with check, king to h2, now queen to f2 with check, king to h1, now giving up all of the pawns, queen captures on h4, king g1, queen captures on g5 with check, king h2, queen h4 check, king to g1, and now again offering a trade of queens, queen g7 check, allowing this small idea, but nothing to it, knight to d5, bishop b2, and now f4, king h2, king comes into the game, king g5, king g4, now comes king h4, bishop to g7, and now queen to e2 check, king h1, and now queen to f3 check, king to h2, and now queen to g3 check. And it was in this position that Aronian, finally being a 4 pawns down, resigned the game, but only because it's a forced checkmate. After queen to g3, king h1, queen checks, king h2, queen checks on e2, king moves, now king g3, and there's no defense against all of these checkmates. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, quite a tournament for Aronian. I mean, before I forget, I did prepare the final standings after round 11. Here we have Caruana in first place with 7 points, still leading this tournament. Mamedjarov still half a point behind in second place, but here we have it. In third and fourth place, sharing with 6 points, Karjakin and Grishuk. So Karjakin also had a terrible start to the tournament, but little by little, he's already here only half a point down behind Fabiano Caruana. We have then Dingliren with 5.5 points, still continuing his perfect streak. Kramnik with 5, So with 4.5, and Aronian still with 3.5 points out of 11 games. So it's gonna be an interesting round 12, and I have even the pairings here for round 12. Today Grishuk faces Aronian. Grishuk has the white pieces, and Aronian is such a wounded beast now that Grishuk will be out for blood, definitely. And you know, the logic behind it being that if everyone gets a point from Aronian, Grishuk will want one as well, with the white pieces especially. And we have Karjakin versus Caruana. Karjakin also with white pieces. So if Grishuk wins against Aronian, and if Karjakin wins against Caruana, then basically anyone can win this tournament. All hell will break loose if this happens. And Mamedjarov does have a chance with the white pieces against Dingliren. Maybe, you know, it's hard to get a win against Dingliren. He proved that. It's hard to lose a game against Dingliren. He proved that yesterday pretty clearly. But you know, all of the rounds here are very interesting. Even Kramnik, if he wins his game against So, he's up to all the way up to 6 points. So everyone can win a game today and get their chance at winning this tournament. So yeah, those were the pairings and those were the standings. I do hope you enjoyed that, and it's very interesting. I don't know. What do you think? Is Aronian losing this game because he's just mad, or maybe he's just totally down for losing so many games before this game, or is he just really just trying to push these little advantages and then gets worse positions for some reason? But blundering this a-pawn on purpose for no reason, I don't think that's something a 2800 player would do, especially if he was in the lead in the tournament. And there's really nothing to achieve here by playing such a move. Even winning this game, you might save a little rating at the end by winning it, but there's really nothing to achieve here. So yeah, that's it. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Anders Lundberg for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. And once again, I would like to thank Nikki for her photos from the candidates tournament. As usual, all of the links to her social media will be in the description below. Feel free to check out some of her work. Thank you all for watching, and yeah, as usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon.